Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jacqueline O'Flanagan, and I'm here on behalf today of Microsoft. And as we kick off today's session, I really want to ground us in a moment. At Microsoft, we empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. This mission could not be more relevant in today's environment when we think about the opportunity for AI ahead of us and AI empowering human achievement. As we look back over the course of the last 50 years, bear with me. As we look back over the course of the last 50 years and over the last decades, we have seen an immense transformation in the way that we do business. When we think about operations and organizations from mainframes to SaaS, what we have uncovered over the last little while is that we have worked in silos for many, many years. And as we start to think about the way that knowledge and information is exchanged across teams, companies, and industries, we're at a pivotal point in this journey as to how we work together and how we will work as we think about this in the future. The broad impact that this will have on financial services is astronomical. When we think about this change, there is no moment that is more relevant than where we are today. We think about agents, times, teammates. We think about the opportunities. When we look at some of the numbers that we have in front of us today, 80% of employees say that they do not have enough time to finish their normal work in any given day. Agents will become part of our day-to-day work, and as we think about this, many of our organizations today are beginning to empower agents throughout our workforce. 82% of organizations, not only in Brazil, but across the world, are starting to think about their workforce with the evidence of agents. And as we think about the last metric on the screen, AI has actually become more intelligent over the course of the last few years, and we're actually starting to see it advance even more so than what we have seen with human civilization. And so when you think about the impact of intelligence on our workforce, it is incredibly powerful to think that as we move forward, AI could even accelerate above and beyond what we see today. AI is disrupting business at its core. Think about that. What we have seen over the course of the last 2 years is nothing as to what we are going to see as we start to move forward. The next 50 years are going to be monumental across our civilizations, across geographies, and across all of the work that we do today. Think about the financial institution of the past versus where we are going today. Many of the individuals that we have heard from at this event alone have talked about the transformation of processes, transformation of client experience, transformation of the way that they're starting to gather assets, retain assets, grow assets, the future of fraud, prevention, and so on and so forth. And so what we have experienced over the course of the last decade is not going to be the same as we start to really think about the future. I feel that this is a critical moment in all of our time. But as we start to think about the impact for Brazil, and we think about FEBRABAN and what this has meant for Brazilians across the country, but for the financial ecosystem within Brazil, over the course of the last 35 years that this event has been in existence, we have seen a massive shift. The numbers that you see in front of you, we have in the last 5 years, over 70% of the population has moved forward with financial inclusion. What does that mean? Without a bank account, you're not able to transact. With the advancement of what we have seen with AI and the ability to onboard clients, open up new accounts, gain access to credit, open up mortgages, think about investments, this is transforming the way that Brazilians and civilizations are starting to work and think. Tie into 94% of Brazilian organizations have already implemented AI today and will continue to do so as we move forward. And lastly, I think this is one of the most pivoting numbers as I think about all that we have learned over the course of the last 3 days, 5%. If nothing else sticks with you as you leave this conference, think about 5%. Within the last decade, the standard rate of increase for the GDP in Brazil has been 1% to 1.4%. How can an economy like Brazil continue to grow at this scale and pace? When you look at other institutions and other countries and the geopolitical impact that's happening across the world, people need to be able to think faster, be more reactive, and really start to drive productivity. With AI, Gen AI, and agents, Brazil has an opportunity, in the financial services ecosystem, has an opportunity to drive GDP by 5% by 2030. Let that resonate. What does that mean for your children? What does this mean for the next generations that are coming up? What does this mean for the availability of capital? And to think about organizations and the infrastructure across Brazil to power an ecosystem. When we think about this more collectively, and we're talking today and specifically around financial services, this is an economic sector that can drive growth across all sectors and have significant impact and becomes a catalyst for change across an entire economy. 5%. Think about that. You're going to have the ability to make a substantial change in the way Brazilians think over the next little while. Why this really starts to resonate. AI has been more of a mainstream topic over the course of the last 24 months, but where we've really started to see acceleration is in some of the other technologies. Think about the moment that we've had in front of us. Some of the technology that we have and is displayed on the screen. iPhones, it took 16 years for them to gain 1 million users. Fast forward, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, so on and so forth. Facebook, it took 4.5 years. OpenAI came to market in February of 2023. And in the last 2 years, we have seen a substantial jump from what people knew then to what people know now. Imagine thinking about this through the lens of technology and the rapid change that we are about to embrace. In 3 months, OpenAI was able to garner over 1 million users. Let that sink in. What does this mean for a population of 220 million people to adopt a new technology, to think about the future and what this means for them? As I was preparing for this conference, I had the opportunity to do quite a bit of market research, which I don't always get to do, but it's something that I'm extremely passionate about. And as we think about financial services, I was brought back to Bradesco and Itaú and all of the amazing financial foundations that we have here. And there was an ad that really resonated with me. And it basically says, "We are the future. I am the future." And when you think about the evolution of technology and what we have actually experienced in this timeline, our future is not going to be the same tomorrow as it is today. We need to be thinking differently about the way we live, the way we work, about the frontier firm and what we have ahead of us. But what this means most is how we carry the knowledge and the information of what we have learned over the course of the last decades and almost 100 years and centuries forward with us so that we continue to define who we are as a civilization. I find this to be somewhat of a relevant stat, and some people may question, what is the overall value of small digital natives and startups on our overall ecosystem? One of the things that I found extremely interesting is over the course of the last 2 years, there's been over 500 AI startups in Brazil that have had over $2 billion in raises. Think about that. Never in our lifetime have we seen this type of rush to technology and access to technology. What does this mean for the overall ecosystem in which we support? This really begins to amplify the sector, and many of these AI firms are now working with a lot of the financial institutions that we see today. How we think about work, how we think about accessing technology is all going to change. As we think about this era, and we think about AI reasoning, and we think about the new way we're working, Microsoft has come up with a new approach to organizations and how we make this real, and what this means for everyone sitting in the room. And as we embark on this AI journey together, we also bring forward the frontier firm. The frontier firm is going to change the way we work, it's going to change the way we think, and it is going to change the way that we scale, not only within our own organizations, but to the customers we serve for now and for many years to come. As we think about this overall journey and becoming a frontier firm, there are three major areas that are of significance for us. One, leveraging digital labor. Many of our organizations over the course of the last 2 years have become much more familiar with digital labor. Transformation of contact centers, using AI to reason over Excel spreadsheets. Many of you may be using Copilot or Google Workspace or others today, and many are becoming more and more familiar. The other thing we're starting to see is many people are bringing their own AI to work, whether it's ChatGPT, OpenAI, Anthropic, whatever the case is, people are starting to work differently. What we're also starting to see is people are starting to redesign the way that they work, thinking of the end in mind. You can't always just think about re-engineering a process and hoping that it'll work. What we're asking people to do is to actually think differently. Maybe the processes of today have biases. Maybe they're not what they need to be. Maybe there's a better way for us to do things. Starting with the end in mind and working your way back as you re-engineer these processes gives you the latitude, the opportunity, and the innovativeness to think differently about how we construct, drive productivity, and create efficiencies. And lastly, I think that this is going to be one that will be most critical for all. Adopt intelligence work instead of information work. And the way that we start to think about this at Microsoft is everyone is now going to have intelligence on tap. What does that mean for everyone in this room? When we look back over history and we think about the impact of machine labor versus human labor, think back to the original progress of the printing press at a time in a civilization where sharing and expanding knowledge was new to everyone. You think about the printing press and what that did for civilization. It allowed people to read, it allowed people to share thought, it allowed information to be transmitted at a much faster pace. Fast forward, over time we've become much more focused on human labor. Not as much on the machine side, but thinking about the evidence of how we work with laptops, with cell phones, and how we are connected as a civilization and society. As we start to think about the emergence of AI into our day-to-day work, into all of our financial institutions, into the way that we communicate with one another, the world of digital labor is born. And so the question that you have to ask yourself is, will we continue to operate, or what can we be doing differently to think about how we're working? Agents sitting on our desk, agents sitting in our teams, not just agents and AI reasoning beside you, but also working with you as a colleague to get your day and your job completed. Think about the freedom of time that this will give back to you to do things that you actually love. Think about time of spending more time with your family and or moving those mundane tasks over to the left side of your desk to be powered by agents so that you can focus on human-centric workloads and think about the future differently. As we start to think about the evolution of organizational change, and this has been a fundamental conversation, I would say, that's come up over the course of the last 24 to 48 hours while we've been in meetings with clients, many of your org structures as they sit today will not be the org structures of what you have tomorrow. And so as we begin to think about this, we think about a traditional org structure today. CEO, lines of business, all of our knowledge is trapped within these various lines of business. Imagine an organization powered by agents, underpinned by safe and secure technology that gives you the guardrails to succeed in everything you do. We are now infusing the opportunity for you to work holistically, faster, better, more productive, and focus on things that matter. And so instead of being focused in silos, we are now moving into workload structures. And so what you see on the bottom is really starting to think about being able to get the job done, having the right people in the right place, and as you move forward, human-centric work being powered by agents. I will say that over the course of the last 2 years, there's been a lot of hesitation and a lot of questions around, do I harvest talent? Do I reinvest talent by leveraging AI? Is my job at risk? Should I move forward with this POC? Should I think about things differently? Absolutely not. What we have found is the evolution over the last 24 months has actually enabled firms to think differently. They want to keep their employees. They want to empower their employees. They want them to do more. They want to be able to focus on new lines of business and generating new revenue with the existing employee base they have today. And what you see in front of you is what we're referring to as the new skills ladder. Organizations will need to pivot the way they think to bring on new skills and to retrain their existing staff for better collaboration mechanisms. And so, do we really want to focus on the work we need to do, or do we want to focus on the work that we choose to do? Because the work that we need to do can be done by agents. And so as we start to think about how agents come together, many of you in this room will become agent bosses. Many of you in this room will start to manage teams of agents. And so as you think about what that means for the future, not only are you going to have to train yourselves and your teams, you're going to have to start to train agents. Many people may not think this is simple. It's actually easier than you think. And so as we start to think about moving from what we want to do or what we need to do to what we prefer to do, we're actually getting into more human-to-human connection. Human will always be in the loop. Human will always have the ability to ration over any of the data and reason over any of the data. And lastly, what we choose to do. This is where we get the most fun. This is where we get to make the most impact. This is where we get to make decisions that will impact civilizations, countries, and the organizations that you structure. Think about the opportunity to redefine a fraud, think about fraud through the lens of how I can say fraud through payments. I think about the overall PIX ecosystem. How can we drive it better, faster, further? How can we think about collaboration across institutions? How can we start to solve some of the financial services ecosystem's biggest problems that we have? We have an aging workforce. We don't have new talent rushing in. How do we start to think about making human-centric decisions and allowing others to be empowered and agents to be empowered to do the things that matter most? One of the biggest questions that we have, and at Microsoft we believe in a growth mindset. And when we think about a growth mindset, it means the ability to think differently, to open up, to collaborate with one another, to fail fast, and to move through so that we can continually push one another. And so what we see here is really a new way of thinking. It's what we need to take in as we think about building this new frontier firm. But what you see here, and one of the things that I love about this, is that we actually still continue to put people at the forefront of everything we do. The way that we think about adaptable generalists taking on much larger disciplines, the way that we think about being able to build a digital-first workforce, this is critical to have human in the loop and human at the center of everything we do. Fast forward, process, we talked a little bit about it just a couple of minutes ago. The evolution of process is changing. And so thinking about the end in mind, but being able to understand not just how the process impacts one area of your business, how it impacts an overall area of your business. Some of the things that we're starting to think about as we rethink the future of AI and new processes is not just about how we collaborate in one industry, it's how we collaborate across industry and really bringing these together. Think about the future of insurance, for example. Think about the future of banking and payments. How do we create a better insurance ecosystem that is now connected to healthcare when you think about an aging population and we think about longevity 2.0? We wouldn't be able to solve some of these problems as quickly as we would like on our own without the impact of AI, without the impact of quantum, without some of these future technologies that are allowing us to do this faster so that we as humans can live longer, more productive, happier, and healthy lives. Process is going to be a big thing that drives that. And as we think about the last component, culture, many of the conversations that we've had over the course of the last couple of days and many of the conversations we have had over time is how do I pivot my culture? People first, followed by process, but understanding where you are going, sharing where you are going every step of the way, communicating to your organizations the importance of AI and the journey that you are on, and thinking about how you are going to infuse AI into every conversation that you're having to become a sentient organization and a sentient industry across the board. The other thing that this means, though, is that you're going to have to change the way that people work. We saw it in the evidence of COVID. Prior to that, everyone came to work every single day. Fast forward, everyone, was then moved into their homes to work into their homes, removed from teams, removed from people, removed from their organization, removed from the cultural structure that we have in the way that we have worked for centuries. Emerged from COVID, we now have teams. We're using it day to day. We're communicating virtually. That's not always the easiest, and it's not always the easiest way to think about culture. As we think about AI and agents, people are not going to need to be in the office as much. People are going to be communicating with agents through agents. People are going to be making payments and transactions and thinking about how they're managing their team through agents. And so what this means for compensation and incentive programs and organizations to think is how they need to be thinking about incentivizing individuals. Especially when you look at, even many of us have faced this, how do you incentivize people to move from mainframe to cloud and now to AI? Structures need to change, KPIs need to change. As organizations, we need to think and grow about what this means for our organizations and our foundations. When we think about what this means for a lot of the various individual lines of business, these are just some of the ways that we are starting to see AI change the way that we work. I realize many of these are operational processes, but as we think about this through the lens of financial services, imagine how this is going to change regulation, trade finance. We think about retail banking or retail lending. Think about applying for a mortgage, receiving credit, making payments for anything. Soon we're going to have agents that actually pay and go and shop for us. When you actually think about contact center transformation and what this means, if I look back at the Microsoft story alone and we consider ourselves customer zero, within 7 months in our contact centers, we had $750 million in cost takeout in 7 months. We were receiving 75 million calls per day. Think about that, per day. Calls were coming in, they were being triaged by humans. It could have been an Azure issue, it could have been an Xbox issue, it could have been a M365 issue. And with agents, we were able to reprocess the entire process or re-engineer the entire process to think differently about the way we work. Calls came in, we triaged them to the right group versus having someone call. We were able to put humans on the end of the line faster for many of these clients to think differently about the problems they're solving. We could triage, we could report back, we could provide case studies into which and why these things were happening and get to root cause and solve the problems faster. These are just some of the things that we have been able to do as Client Zero. And I'm hoping as you think across your organization, these are many of the areas where we're seeing use cases start to emerge today. Financial services, as we had talked about, is an immense catalyst for many of these changes. And we are starting to see it and have heard about quite a few of them here. As we think about this new frontier firm, there's an underlying tech stack that is really starting to emerge. And the way that we think about it is everyone will have a co-pilot and everyone will have an agent. And think about these as your new coworkers of the future. As I started to kick off our presentation, one of the things I had mentioned was through the lens of Microsoft, we view the opportunity to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. This couldn't be more real as we think about the evolution of AI and the era of AI in which we sit today. Agents plus Copilot is human ambition. Imagine being able to drive productivity to the 20th and 30th percentile and get your time back so that you can spend it on the things you love and or to spend more time focused on human opportunity. And human ambition is born. When we think about the way organizations are set up for the future and the way that work is organized, we think of it in 3 different levels. When you look across these levels from humans with assistant to human-led agents and agents at work, think about this as a force multiplier. When you think about the first level, we are starting to see returns in the way of 2 to 3%. As we move across the scale to level 3, we're starting to see exponential growth in productivity and revenue that is actually starting to drive 20, 30, and 40%. The way we think about things is changing. And so what you see here is think about this through the lens of baseline productivity gains through those levels and what we're able to achieve together. I wanted to spend a couple of moments talking about, individualized use cases of what we're actually seeing, and I realize these are 3 of thousands. At Microsoft, we currently have over 1 million agents deployed across our clients within the financial services ecosystem. One of the stories, and I'll share it here because I think it'll resonate with most people, is the stories about Barclays. Barclays is a public announcement that we made earlier this week. And like many of you, as a large financial institution, they were really wrestling with AI being built in silos. Not being able to uncover and think about cost recovery and the benefits of what AI was doing in one division and how that would translate over into another. And so what they did is they came to Microsoft and said, how can you help? Leveraging Copilot Chat, powered by Copilot on top of that, empowered by agents, they have now taken and drawn productivity for their entire organization. They're looking to democratize AI within their own organization to drive more productivity for Barclays as a firm and to empower human achievement so they can do more as an organization to drive impetus across our ecosystem. We've seen other organizations gain very similar productivity and product scope. As I start to wrap up, and I'm going to let this video play for 1 second. I hope we can hear it.
AI will take over repetitive tasks and enable people to focus on their strengths.
It supercharges our endeavors.
Et Copilot va nous aider à interroger des bases de données qui vont me permettre de faire en quelques minutes quelque chose que j'aurais mis sûrement précieuses heures à faire.
It enables us to operate at scale and at speed, efficiently, accurately.
Our virtual assistant will help tourists better know all the hidden gems of the city.
Our agents used to handle 8,000 calls a day. Since deploying Veronica, that volume has dropped to 1,000 calls.
Generative AI can learn from the data to help improve the farmer productivity.
With more efficiency and automation, we were able to increase our enrollment from 4,500 students to 12,000 students this year.
Otimizou muito o nosso trabalho, porque a aprovação passou, de 60% para 98%.
Pues ahora es como tener a un tutor 24/7, te puede ver a lo que quieras, que es súper inteligente.
Customer outreach takes 4 hours. With Copilot, that is a 15-minute journey, that gift of time. It's worth $50 million in annual revenue, and that is math that matters.
It's not a question if you should adopt Copilot, but when, and I can give you the answer to when. It's now.
The moment for AI is now. The moment for Brazil is now. We have an opportunity to collectively learn from one another to empower future generations by agents and AI. I go back to what I heard, in the research that I did, and I think about connecting the past, the present, and the future. Io sou o futuro. We are the future. We have an opportunity to transform and to bring future generations forward and for civilizations for years to come, powered by a new way of working and a new way of thinking. Thank you for having me.